I'm the marketing director at Michigan Radio. I want to thank you for joining us this evening for our Issues in Ale discussion, back to school during COVID. Issues in Ale is a discussion series sponsored by Michigan Radio, designed to engage people in conversations about important issues facing Michigan. You know, normally during the year we would host these events at a brew pub or a bar across the state, but since we can't do that, we are online. So we invite you to sit back with a beverage of your choice and enjoy our discussion. I have a couple announcements to make before we get started. I want to let you know that our next Issues in Ale event after tonight is coming up on Wednesday, September 30th. Members of our Kids These Days podcast team will be discussing issues related to teenage mental health. So we hope you'll be able to join us for that. And events like Issues in Ale and all the programming that you hear on Michigan Radio are made possible by our donors. So if you're a donor to Michigan Radio who are joining us this evening, we want to thank you. And if not, you can visit support.michiganradio.org to become a donor to the station. So our audience tonight is muted during this webinar, but we will be taking your questions. We had a few that were submitted in advance, but if you have a question, you can submit it using the Q&A box that you'll see on your screen. We will try to answer as many of those as we can. And one thing we'd ask, since we're having an education discussion, when you submit your question, please let us also know the name of your local school system. So just after your question, just type in the name of the school system that you're with. So we're recording tonight's event, and we should have that recording available up on our website on Thursday. So if you want to review that or share that with others, we'll have that available. And assisting us this evening with our event are other members of the Michigan Radio team. That includes Rusty Brock, who's handling the technical end of this Zoom event, Stateside producer April Van Buren, who is monitoring the questions that are being submitted tonight. And we also want to thank our marketing events producer, Suzanne Bellinger, for helping us set up this event. So our host for tonight is April Baer. You may know April as the host of Stateside, Michigan Radio's daily talk show that covers news, politics, and culture, and what you need to know about Michigan. You can hear Stateside each weekday at 3 p.m. and again at 9 p.m. on Michigan Radio. And the show can also be heard on public radio stations in northern Michigan and across the UP. So without further delay, live from Studio East, here's April Baer.
Well, good evening, everybody. And thank you for making some time in the middle of your week for this. I think first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that this is not the way we prefer to gather under any circumstances, but it is good to gather. And I want to thank everyone who's here, from our guests to all the staff who helped put this together, to everybody who is paying attention to this online. And also acknowledge that there's just a lot of screen time lately. I can't really get you to do the little clap icon because of the way we have this set up. But if this is not your first Zoom or Skype or Facebook live meeting today, or Facebook video, could you please give yourself a huge pat on the back? Give yourself a huge pat. All right, yeah. See all of our panelists. Let's also just acknowledge the moment. If you're not wearing shoes right now, please also give yourself a pat on the back. I'm gonna just out myself that I did take my shoes off for this. If you have attended another education-related Zoom meeting or conference call or something today, let's do one more pat. And if, like me, you actually got off of your child's school's back to school Zoom meeting to come do this tonight, give yourself a big pat. And finally, if you just have a lot of things going on in your life right now, let's I don't know if a pat or a hug is best, but do whatever you need to just give yourself some space. We appreciate that you're here to think things through with us. This is not as structured a discussion as we usually have for Stateside. I'm hoping we can keep this a little informal. I did not actually bring, see, this is what happens during the pandemic. It's Issues in Ale, and I forgot my legal beverage. Actually, it's probably not that legal in the workplace, so it's just as well. I've got my bottle of iced tea here. I don't know, maybe I can find an additive down in the kitchen fridge. But if you have a legal beverage with you, we support that. We have a really amazing team of folks who are involved in education, some stakeholders here with us tonight, and I just want to introduce them to you. Jametta Lilly is here. She is the CEO of Detroit Parent Network, and she brings a wealth of experience in systems change. She's created dozens of innovative programs that are of assistance to families. Her work has been done over her career across public and private agencies, including some foundations, Wayne County Head Start, the Wayne Children's Healthcare Access Program, which she co-founded. And you may just know Jametta, especially if you live in Detroit, as a thought leader who promotes equity and social justice with Education Trust Midwest. And recently she worked on the governor's coronavirus racial disparities task force. Jametta, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
It's a joy to be here. Thank you.
And Robyne Muray is here also. She teaches 8th grade English and 10th grade American Lit at Lansing Eastern High School. Is that the classes you're assigned to this year, Robyne? I forgot to ask if that was true this semester as well.
No, actually it's not. I have been selected to be a participant in the Aspiring Leaders Program for Lansing School District. So I'm going to be at like 5 different sites throughout the district, really learning the other end of education outside of the classroom, the administration side, and it's really been an eye-opener.
Mm-hmm.
Secondary education is what she excels in. In 2018 and 2019, she was Teacher of the Year for Michigan Region 6. And her career also includes 14 years teaching in Flint's public schools. And she has advised on the Michigan Teacher Leadership Advisory Council. Robyne, it is great to have you.
Thank you.
And we just don't do these things without Matinga Ragatz. She has 25 years of classroom experience, former Michigan Teacher of the Year, and yes, member of the National Teachers Hall of Fame, even though I know she gets really embarrassed every time I say that. And these days, she is lending her expertise to teachers and districts all over Michigan. And actually also, we haven't talked about this much, Matinga, but I know you're also part of a global education community, helping with instructional innovation. And she's a project-based learning specialist with a focus on educational equity. You have heard her, you have loved her on Stateside. Matinga Ragatz, great to have you.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be a really good discussion today. Thank you for having me.
You know, and to think we were worried, when we first started planning this, is there going to be enough to talk about? I know this has been an incredibly busy couple of weeks. Maybe the first thing we should talk about is the summer slide. It's common every year. Students come back to the classroom. They've been in a less structured environment. They lose some of their skills. And now they've had a very unorthodox end of the year. I'm wondering, Robyne, maybe you could begin. What would you expect to see in classrooms, given how completely nuts things were last spring and how many families have spent their summer?
Well, I look at it a little bit differently because I feel like this, I don't look at it as unfinished learning. I look at it as a new directional piece of learning. And I think that if we capture in on the experience of what our students have been through and look at it through the lens of the content level expectations, through our quick writes, who are you, where are you going, I am from, what has been a way of therapeutical journal writing, if I could say. And then I also think of it with the mathematics. The students have really understood the rise and fall of like the malls, the different stores. I think that we can look at this as an educational experience for the students and also be really conscientious of what they individually have went through and have the empathy and be able to open up the conversation to help them. So that I look at it in a different aspect.
Boy, I mean, the wealth of life lessons from economics to social science and social justice and American history. And as you say, writing, when you put it in that lens, I do see that. Jametta, Lilly, I did not mean to offer that up with the thought that parents were somehow remiss in how they were having kids spend their summer, because, I mean, isn't it the case that a lot of parents have had more than a few things going on these past couple of months?
To say the least. And I really appreciate what Robyne was saying. She was really talking about our affect, our social emotional connection to our kids, and to make sure that we start off there, that we love you, we care about you. What have you been feeling, and how do we then use academics to empower them to be able to articulate those experiences? Well, guess what? We need to do the same thing with our families, because so often when we think about education, everything is focused on the child. It's as if they are a separate appendage, and parents are just a delivery system for the kids, for the educational system. And I think now more than ever, institutions and education institutions are realizing if you don't have this relationship with the parents and are not nurturing them and giving them opportunities to grow, listen, and engage, we're really not going to help our kids. So I think we had the COVID slide, which is quite scary. And a lot of parents have really been struggling, and it doesn't matter what your zip code is, in many cases trying to figure out, well, what do I do to help my kid during this timeline? And so I think a lot of parents have been really confused with some of the online messaging. Is someone asking me to teach 5th grade math? And you know that's intimidating. Or is someone expecting that I can take my 4-year-old who never sits still for me and suddenly now put them in front of a screen for an hour, a couple hours a day? So parents have had a lot of mixed messages come to them. And many of them, particularly in some areas of the state more so than others, I mean, everybody's been affected, including my own family, from COVID. So there are huge issues that have been affecting the social, emotional, the psychological, the cultural dynamics of families, and then how that plays out in their household. So I think we really have to hit pause and be thinking about, no matter how we come back, whether it's face-to-face or online, how do we strengthen, how do we use this time to work with families to strengthen what should be the whole child educational system that we want here in Michigan?
We want to take an opportunity to hear a bit from everybody who's with us from home tonight. I know you thought you'd just be sitting there with your feet up on the couch, but we were curious to hear a bit from you about how the fall is being reflected in your communities, and we wanted to know. We're gonna put up a poll question that you'll be able to answer. How is your school opening? Is it opening in person, or is it opening online? Let us know, and we'll flash that poll up on the screen. There it is. Online, in person, maybe your school's doing a hybrid. And if you don't know, that's fine too. But whether you're coming at this just as a member of the community or a concerned parent or a family member, maybe you've got grandkids or nieces and nephews in school, or maybe you're a parent yourself. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say about that. Matinga, we're in this situation where a lot of tone has to get set. There are teachers who will be connecting with kids, some of whom they may know from seeing them around the school, some of whom they surely have never met before. And there are lots of parents who maybe just barely got through the spring situation and need to set a tone for what learning is going to be like, perhaps from home this fall, or who maybe want to explain what the expectations are going to be in school. Okay, here's our poll. Looks like 52% of respondents say their schools are starting online, 9% in person, 17% hybrid, and some folks just don't know. Matinga, what advice do you have for parents and teachers who are trying to set that tone?
Well, for one, I want to remind everybody that this is a national emergency, right? It's not quite Beirut boom, but we're going through a global emergency, so things are not going to be the same. And like any emergency, we just have to be able to cope. So I hope that in this conversation, we can reframe, Robyne just kind of set the pace as to, just look at it differently. And for example, this COVID situation in the spring, that was so unexpected that things were really squishy. And schools, although they pivoted and they did what they could, it just wasn't picture perfect. But teachers have had time to plan, they've had time to think about it, they've had time to land. And so the fall is going to be a lot more structured, a lot more thoughtful. And so kids are going to be able to just kind of get a rhythm in the minute they start. But I want to remind parents that this is also an opportunity to teach the kids, not just always focus in education. I think sometimes we value the content more so than the skill. So not to worry about whether or not my child is going to remember this content or he's going to fall behind what. And so I really want to encourage parents, and I want to encourage the community to take this time. We've had this global reset, everybody's called it different things, but to really focus on teaching those coping skills and, you know, returning those relationships with your kids. I recommend, do not make homework the center of your relationship with your kids this fall. There are so many things that are so much more important, like just raising a really good human being. And if we can focus on that and this human being that can get through this trauma that we've all suffered, I think that they'll come out a better person. So that's for me the recommendation.
Robyne, what are you hearing from your colleagues at Lansing Eastern about how they're hoping to set the tone? You know, what kind of face they want to present in those first few days online?
Well, I definitely have witnessed that there's excitement. We are embarking in the Bitmojis and the virtual classrooms, the virtual lockers. And trust me, it took me a weekend to like get it together because my first assignment is at Atwood, and that's new tech. And Miss Laws and the entire staff there, they are so in depth in it and wanting to make it exciting for our students. So I have seen a clamor of excitement and wanting to make sure that the students know that we are still there for them. From the backpacks, I was at work last night till 7 o'clock myself, Ms. Laws, and different teachers that came in to make sure that those students had those backpacks. And I could just see just the excitement in the students' faces, even though they had their masks on. It was very hot, but you could just feel that the excitement. Children really want to go back to school. And I think that teachers, we just have that passion. We want to make sure that we are really there for our craft. And we want to make sure our students are as safe as possible. But there is a spirit of collaboration, I think, in the district. We want to help each other. This is it's so unprecedented that really virtual learning and really exclusively, because, you know, in the past we've had the option of, and it was chic. Now this is like the norm. So everyone has to be on board and have a proficiency with technology, and parents, students, we're all collaborating together. The students are going to beat us, though. I'm going to guarantee you that. They can navigate technology like nobody's business, but I can honestly say that there is a sentiment of excitement. We want our children to know that we care and we're here for them.
I hope that we're not underestimating the joy that both students and parents, and I guess teachers too, bring to the return to school every year. I was listening to the principal of my kid's school saying he was in the building for the first time in a while, and he was feeling some grief, you know, because this is like Christmas. It's his favorite time of year. And I know that it's going shopping for school supplies and all those experiences, picking out the clothes and everything is always such an event. Jametta, do you have thoughts on setting the tone so that the joy can still be a part of it for the families who are coping with all this?
Sure. I think there's two things that I would just like to underscore. When we're talking about the joy, I mean, there's just the joy of learning, the joy of seeing your friends again, the joy of the pitter patter of little feet or, you know, big feet moving down the hall that we know is going to be very different. And I think the more that we can underscore that different is our challenge. So how do we stay connected regardless of that? That's important. Yet I think there's a couple of things that we all have to help different parents have access to. A lot of parents are going to be savvy about the technology they're using. However, the data shows very clearly the vast majority don't. So the digital divide that we have is huge, and it cannot be underestimated that you have tens of thousands of homes that don't have the adequate bandwidth, or there's only one device in the household with 4 children, and mom and dad or grandpa, uncle, whatever, are all trying to use those 2 devices. Mm-hmm. And even though, thank goodness, at least here in the Detroit metro area, we have connected futures and more people are bringing resources, as the state of Michigan, we have digital deserts out there. So that inequality of access to the technology that then could take advantage of the wonderful collaboration. So there are deterrents that are systemic. So, and quiet has kept a lot of the frustration that we hear from parents, both not only through Detroit Parent Network, but working with partners all across the metro area, is we hear at once the anticipation of wanting to go back to school, but the concerns about, is it really healthy? Is it really healthy?
You mean to be on the devices?
Yeah. No. Is it really healthy to go back to school?
I see.
And then two, I want to use these devices, but doggone, I don't really know how to use them. So the districts are, not all of them, but many of them are just ramping up now to try to get out the training and support to parents to use these devices so they can create that environment of excitement. And hopefully, and this is certainly what we're propagating, parents be just as excited about the return to learning and wherever we can do that. But I do think that structurally we need to pay more attention to addressing these inequities so that all parents and all kids can have access to the kind of joy and tools that we know will enable learning.
We're getting some questions from folks at home. I want to get to them quickly, but Jametta, I must ask, Connected Futures, folks might remember, is that initiative that 4 major funders came together to bankroll so that every kid in the Detroit Public Schools Community District would have access to a device and a hotspot and hopefully some tech support. Just real briefly, could you give us a thumbnail about what you've learned watching that roll out?
Well, like with most very large, unprecedented programs, it has some bumps. But there's no question that Dr. Vitti and his team, working along with the private sector that are providing these resources, are moving that technology out to families. You know, our issue really is, but that's not all the kids in Detroit. Detroit Public School Community District is just one of the districts. So we've got probably about another 40% of our children are in charters. Not to mention we have children who live in the city of Detroit who go to districts outside of the city of Detroit. So the question again is back to equity, and the charters, many of them have been able to draw down some PPE and CARES dollars, but they have not necessarily had the same level of investment to get the equipment out, and also not just the equipment, but the digital literacy that's necessary in order to do that. So we're excited about it, but here's what I'm hoping. So with Ed Trust and even our work in the governor's task force, we're saying really we should have internet for all. All families throughout the state of Michigan should have access to, broadband and have the devices and be supported to have literacy, because that's going to help education. It's going to help telehealth with medicine, as well as mental health and physical health. And really importantly, it's going to help the workforce development. So it's really important for us to address that issue, because I think somebody said it, like for example, my grands who are like 8 years old, they could probably go to NASA tomorrow with all that they know how to do with the technology. Our kids are going to figure it out, but the rest of us, we need help.
Right. I feel like my chin is rising on this. Let's get to some questions that I'm hoping you could help us with. We have one from Jennifer, Jennifer, thanks for being here. She says, I teach science enrichment classes. What was the biggest challenge of teaching virtually and keeping students engaged? Matinga, you talk to so many teachers. What comes to your mind?
Well, the first thing was just the platform and the how quick the turnover was. And so a lot of the challenge was, at the beginning of the school year, there is these norming times where the teachers get to norm their class. Kids get to learn how to learn in their environment, what their classroom culture is. So we spend a lot of time doing that. There's also a lot of research about classroom environment and the perfect learning environment for this type of student, and also the flexible furniture. And we've done a lot of work to create that environment. So when the kids were coming in the fall, there was this onboarding period that there simply was not during the turnaround. And so without the onboarding, wow, they were just, the kids would come in and they'd bring their pets, and they would, now you had a Zoom full of, 10-year-olds seeing who could be the funniest, changing their background. And so that was a really difficult thing. And of course, kids right away thought, also there was this idea that, well, whatever you did online in the spring didn't count. So a lot of the kids didn't come around. Do you blame them? And so those of the ones that did come, it was difficult because it's just that we lost that onboarding culture. But now, again, teachers have been doing professional development online. They understand the tools better. So a lot of the teachers are using the breakout sessions, the breakout feature on some of these platforms to get the kids to, turn and talk, or keep them engaged through these particular activities that you can do with these really, really powerful tools. So now we are ready.
Yeah. Robyne, how would you answer that question? The biggest challenges you saw playing out?
I definitely would agree with Matinga. It's the matter of engagement. And one thing that I was discussing with my as a principal mentor today was just the differentiation of how we were going to factor that out virtually. I think that is so very important, because we have to really make sure that we are tapping into all of our students' mindset, because again, we think for the majority, in which I probably would argue that 75% of our student population, they're very much comfortable with technology, but that 25% we can't forget. So my thought was, how do I make sure that differentiation instruction is also being provided during these type of, when we're online in the different breakout rooms. So
Robyne, I don't mean to burst in, but could you explain differentiation in layperson's terms?
Well, in other words, when you look at an individual, at the onset of each school year in my practice, I did a student inventory to figure out how my students best understood information. Some of us are more visual, some of us are auditory, kinesthetic movements, maybe through project-based, that you can really show that you have reached proficiency in whatever the content course instruction that I'm laying out for you at the time. So when you're virtual, that student that may be able to perform a piece through movement, it's very, how do you make sure that that platform is presented for that student equitably, like Jametta was saying. I've always wanted my students to be able to showcase and bring forth their best arsenal when hitting a new learning practice, learning style or a learning skill set or whatever the case may be. So with me, I had to really kind of wrap my mind around how can I make sure that every one of my students are really being able to present themselves in this virtual atmosphere. So that was it was kind of difficult, but at the same time, I've really met a lot of people, and I think I go back to that collaboration. You're gonna have to reach out and ask for that help that you, and be humble. Because again, I reached out to Matinga. I'm not gonna go over there on that soapbox because I'll probably start crying, but it is a way to still be able to allow students that that are more performance-based or a presentational mode through the virtual. And Matinga definitely supported that idea, and I was able to move forward. So again, I'm not just speaking for everybody. I can just only speak for myself in that individual aspect, but I've seen some young teachers that are coming out with all kinds of, like, I'm like, may I please get some tutoring services? Because there are a lot of inspiring young teachers out there that can really help us during this time. And I'm humble enough to say that I'm going to reach out and I'm going to collaborate and whatever I need to do to make myself better. This is as an educator, we're life learners. So we have to embrace on the fact that this may be different, but I'm going to be a life learner. Let me reach out and get that help that I need from someone that can show me and come to me with the way I learn. I'm a visual learner, so most definitely I'm going to always look out for my students in that multiple learning experience.
Yeah.
It's so true. I mean, the presentational aspect of it, as I think a lot of adults are learning in their, in their work lives, even just like showing up for a team meeting, if you're in the service industry, people are looking at you in different ways, and you're presenting yourself in a different way. I mean, from the kids' perspective, I don't care how much time you spent on TikTok. Performing academically is not the same as just performing online. We have a question from Tim, who writes in. He says, any thoughts about reaching students with learning challenges, including special education eligible students online? Wow, that's a big topic. Jametta, what are you hearing from parents who have kids who have special needs and maybe an individual education plan?
A lot of concern.
Yeah.
A lot of concern. And that goes down with our 3 and 4-year-olds for individual families, IFSPs, as well as IEPs. So one of the things that we're hoping to see out of the return to learning legislation is that there are more resources available to teachers to come up with different strategies specifically for children with special needs. Because let's be real frank, they basically have been kind of left out of the equation. And we've got to figure out some ways to do that. So we know that our babies, those, we're talking about our PKs 1, 2, and 3, children with special needs, disabilities, English as a second language, and many other populations need a specialized approach. And I think that there has to be some new norming because it's all very new. And it's not clear. So one of the things I am hearing to the plus is the districts, both charter and the public, are talking about different strategies specifically with kids with special needs. I've not seen the specifics yet, but this is the thing we tell our parents. As tedious as it might be, read the Return to Learning package, dive into that 64-page document that both our folks on the public health side and education did, and then call your district. So we need a partnership. Call your district and say, what are you making available for my 3rd grader or my 7th grader who has this issue or that issue? Who do I talk to? How do I make sure they get what they need? Those questions are still out there. So parents have to be pushing that. And I think that that's going to be one of the tougher areas for educators to begin to address. Those areas that we know that you can't just put someone in front of a screen, that hugs and multiple intelligence strategies are for everybody. And so we got to help our parents with that.
And if we can just get to brass tacks, when you say the legislation you hope had some resources, what do you mean? Do you mean funding or flexibility?
Money, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
we still have no budget, no state budget, let's just say.
Yeah, well, perhaps one of the things that we are learning is that the deficit isn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. But within that, and certainly Ed Trust and other organizations are all saying to the legislators, regardless of the amount of funds that may need to be cut, we have to prioritize investing in education. And we have to shield our babies who are special needs, as English second learners, and quite frankly, high poverty districts, because the reality is high poverty districts have issues historically with children being able to perform at a proficiency level. And if we're not addressing that, then Michigan just might as well pull the shade down because we're already at the bottom of the nation. But so if we could all begin to say we have to fund equitably, and certainly the governor is proposing, I believe, a distribution of these funds that about 65% of the dollars would be addressed in an equitable way, which means a protective way to those districts with high poverty and these other specialized populations. So it is going to take money.
Yeah, and April, can I
Please
jump in
do.
real quick? Because it's not just the money. Of course, we never leave money on the table. I totally understand that, because we do need money and we do need funds. But one of the things that I'm hoping that administrators especially and logistics, the people who are doing the logistics are starting to think about is the opportunity here to really make education differentiated, because we have an opportunity that kids, we no longer have to deal with space issues. And I'm thinking about, school rollouts where the kids go in at 8 o'clock and they leave at 2 o'clock, because that's what the norm is. That's what the systemic practice has been. And then the teachers have to work from 8 to 2 to make sure that they're disciplined and they're working, rather than saying some kids can be out of here in 2 hours, so that give the teachers more time to do and to address kids with needs. And so dividing the day a little bit different than just trying to emulate the traditional classroom. I think that's a big mistake. Granted, to go in and try it that way just to set the pace is one thing, but it's a missed opportunity to just create a school year that looks exactly like the one that you had yesterday. You had March 12th, without realizing that, wow, here's an opportunity for us to really be equitable to all of our children by allowing allowing the teachers to create, allowing the teachers to innovate, and stop keeping them, expecting them to work with their hands tied behind their back.
Locked into our old understanding of what a school day
100%.
looks
That's
like.
one of the biggest issues to making this work is just these norms and these peripheral bumpers that a lot of logistics people are putting in the way.
At the same time, I'm just constantly smacked in the face by what the realities of this moment mean for single parents, single working parents. Jametta, it's not that parents don't care about their kids' education, but how often do you see parents wish for a more innovative, a different way of schooling? How often do you see that running into the realities of their own lives and just the in the now things that they're dealing with, needing to work?
Yeah. So you hit on something that's so important, and that's the system changing itself to be responsive and creative and innovative. And at the same token, parents are also the result of these same systems. So a lot of times parents don't know to even ask that creative question, what if? But we all know that, generally speaking, that we need to have after-school programs. We all know that there also need to be programs that are available, particularly around essential workers and childcare. So we're really learning how the workforce and having childcare and school needs to be more available to parents. And what we're hearing constantly from our parents is that they're concerned about exactly the lack of flexibility. No one asks me, what is it that I need? But also, as a single parent, the other reality in this that's really a huge dynamic is parents are also being expected to work at home. And so how do you work at home? Yeah, I see all the heads moving. How do you work at home and be accountable to your employer when you've got a 2-year-old, a 7-year-old, and maybe a 14-year-old in your household? And again, back to 2 devices. So we've got to create some ways to be responsive to support that parent in that kind of scenario. And again, ingenuity is out there, but we've got to have smaller classes, more opportunity for teachers and support staff to engage and support parents that are struggling with these issues.
And business got to kick in too. Businesses need to realize that, you're hiring people. These people have needs with childcare. Schools are not like Amazon, just go online and ask for it and it comes at your door, right? So in other words, the businesses that are hiring people who have to be essential workers, what are they doing to make sure that their workers have childcare?
Or at least some flexibility.
Flexibility, yeah.
If you're just joining us online for this, this is the Michigan Radio Issues and Ale discussion. Matinga Ragatz is here. She's an education consultant and former Michigan Teacher of the Year. We're also talking with Robyne Muray from Lansing Eastern High, Region 6, former Region 6 Teacher of the Year, and Jametta Lilly, the CEO of Detroit Parents Network. And if you have questions, pop them into the chat because we still have plenty of time. Before we do some more audience questions, there's something I wanted to ask all of you to chew on a little bit. There are a lot of schools that are starting online for the first few weeks. Not all of them. There are some who are face-to-face. If schools are able to get back into the classroom at some point this school year, and let's just say it's starting to feel like a big if, looking at the way the case trajectory has gone statewide. It still feels like we're going to be looking at some kind of year where we're maybe face-to-face for a little while, and then cases spike, and then everybody goes back home, or even just thinking about the year in terms of the fluctuations in everybody's lives. I want to ask about what that's going to mean for teachers and for parents. And for everybody at home, I have a poll question for you as well. As we're hearing from our guests, I wonder if you could answer this question. And it's going to flash up on the screen here real shortly. Would you be okay with kids going back to school before a vaccine is available? There it is. So while everybody at home is thinking about that a little bit, Robyne, how in the world can teachers create something like a cohesive plan for the year under conditions like this when you know, maybe they're going to be interacting in person, maybe they're going to be online. The testing situation's still a little bit up in the air. How do you plan?
I think that we once again have to look at this as being very unprecedented. And if we talked about previously, that the horseman schedule of education, we have all talked about that through any master's program, any dialogue with colleagues, that we're no longer an agricultural country. So therefore, our education system is 100 years dated. But you're going from one extreme to another extreme without any kind of pre-warning. So you can't, and the reason why I'm going through this little narrative is you cannot look at planning your year like you typically could years before. You're going to have to be able to look at this as small segments of time. It might move us forward to looking at year-round schooling. There's a lot of different plans that might come on. This is just my mindset and my thought process on this, but we're going to have to really, even after COVID, and I'm going to claim after COVID, we're going to have to change our educational system time frame, and we're going to also have to look at that there's going to be that hybrid mix, just to think about snow days. There are going to be so many ways that we can keep education moving in a positive mode in the future. But to answer your question right now, I would say that if I was in a classroom, I would be looking at first marking period and doing the very best I can do for first marking period, having a backup plan for asynchronous learning, making sure I had my synchronous strategy, and then I would also have in person. You just would have to have like 3 backup plans. And most educators, I think the Matinga would chime in and support me on this, we always have 2 or 3 different backup plans for
the backup plan, the backup plan for the backup plan, the backup plan for the backup plan.
Yeah, we just have to.
Yep, hashtag tiny wins.
Matinga, I know how deep your commitment goes to looking at innovative ways of schooling, but I also know how in touch you are with the realities that a lot of teachers face in terms of having to show some kind of, you know, measurability for what's going to happen this year. What do you think teachers will do to try to come up with their plans? I think,
you know, teachers have the ability to land like Spider-Man. I'm not like Robyne, you know, back me up on this one. And like you said, you know, we have all these backup plans, but I really want to speak to administrators, and I want to speak to the people, the decision makers, especially regarding standardized testing. Right now, it's not the time. Like, what exactly are you trying to evaluate during a national emergency, right? So yes, we can teach your children, but not to the standard of that test right now. Yes, if you allow us to figure new things out, we can reach a new group of students. We can really make things equitable for all kids, but we got to try different things. So this is a very experimental year. If the decision makers decide, listen, let's just make this, let's just, you know, have each other's back and make this year a successful year for our kids and for our teachers, I think that you will see a lot of success. And you see a lot of innovation, and you'll see a lot of creativity come through. But as long as this, you know, words like rigor and words like we got to keep up with this and we got to keep up with that, and we got to fall behind, as long as we have that mentality, again, it's like trying to assess a survey, a population in the middle of a war. You know, sure, you might come up with some numbers, but what exactly are those numbers for? So the teachers, I think, you know, we always try to do our best regardless of the situation, but this message is more so for the decision makers to really just relax this year and give us an opportunity to remake education in forget the education we had and really look for the education that we want, like Jametta said, that we could use and that would really, really help our kids in every way, all our kids, not just some who can afford it.
Jametta, Lilly, oh, please go ahead, Robyne.
I'm sorry to interrupt. One of the things that our district is doing is that for the first 2 or 3 weeks, we're really focusing in on not curriculum, but really mindset, cultural connections, wellness checks. So I do think that there is effort being made, and administration and executive teams are looking at, really wanting the best interest for the student. I mean, to me, I have never seen such collaboration, such support, such background prep development. We've had some wonderful webinar sessions where the district is really taking some time to make sure, are you okay? That wellness check. Here's some tools. I just see a humility, and I've been a teacher now for 20 years, 14 years in the city of Flint, but I've never really seen the collaboration on the levels as I've seen this year. Now, in previous years, of course, with the regional teacher, the network that we have, that's definitely been in place. But in terms of districts saying, come on, let's come together as one, the kindness, I know that I don't want to sound like I'm sugarcoating anything, but I just think it's worth putting out there that our executive team, at least in Lansing School District, they're saying, we want you to focus on understanding what our babies have been through. And I'm quoting this is coming from people that I never have heard that kind of conversation. Concentrate on the babies. Understand what they're going through. When you're on those Zoom conferences, if that child does not want their video up, you be mindful that you don't know what their circumstances are. We're being trained to understand what these children may be going through. And I don't want to get emotional, but I see it. I hear it. People are coming through. Stakeholders throughout the state of Michigan are embracing us and saying, we are here to help you. Each district is going to have maybe different challenges and different ways that they're going to go about virtual, hybrid, or whatever the case may be. But I'm coming to y'all sincerely from the heart. I see it. I feel it.
It is so easy to lose sight of some of that as the debate has gotten louder in the political arena, and the fact that Black families are facing, a generational cataclysm right now. And families all over Michigan from every background have faced disruptions and economic hardships and just everything all at once. Jametta, Lilly, we got a question from somebody who's watching right now that's not unrelated to this. And that question of how you go forward in a time of extreme uncertainty. And we can say trauma. Danielle says, how can I help convince major employers in Michigan to provide more flexibility for parents and maybe students learning from home? I wonder if you could answer Danielle's question and maybe add if there's anything else, if it goes beyond just outreach to the work world.
Well, the extraordinary thing is actually business throughout the state of Michigan really is aware that we are behind in education and is talking about the need precisely for innovation. We see anywhere from the regional chambers, there are groups of businesses that are calling for actually equity, who are now finally realizing how important childcare is and are trying to look at resources for that. So I think one of the things is to find out in your area, what are the businesses or business sectors that are working around issues for growth and development? Because literally anybody who does anything that has to do with economics knows how important education is. And they understand, even now, which is really exciting to me, they really are understanding that when we're talking about educating, that means first we have to come here healthy. Our babies have to come here healthy. If they're not healthy, they can't learn. If our kids are not learning, they cannot achieve. If they're not achieving, Michigan cannot move forward.
They don't get the workforce they need.
Yeah, so businesses understand that. And so that might be, so I would invite that person to take a look at just going online. EdTrust is one I would suggest. There is the Michigan Launch, which is a combination of both nonprofit and profits working together. What are the strategies that businesses can put and partner with other systems? So there's actually more awareness on the part of larger business. Now, I don't mean necessarily if you work for maybe a smaller one, but I would encourage anyone is get that data, get those voices, and share that with your company. I think you'll be delighted, and it may really help. The other thing I have to go here. So on one hand, all of us are excited about the notion that we know educating and lifelong learning can be so much more than it is in this country. I mean, there's so many other beautiful examples internationally in particular. Yet there's another bug that we just have to address. The issue in the room is COVID. We are in a pandemic. We're in a situation where it is natural for teachers, the people who are so vital to our education, to have questions about, am I going to be safe? And then parents, we understand more and more from our pediatricians, and certainly we're hearing more about them from not only the AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, and others. We don't really know fully how this disease is impacting children. So that there are some unknowns, and there are some things that I think in order for us to get to that place of creativity and innovation and power and partnership, we've also got to make sure that we're trying to create an environment that is as much as risk-free as we can. So no such thing as totally risk-free.
Yeah.
But has that district created a plan that is for face-to-face, that is protective to children and is protective to teachers? And people have to have that dialogue. And if it's not there, then don't send your children there. And we're hearing teachers say, until I feel comfortable, I prefer to do this. So there has to be some give and take, because the reality is that COVID is part of our new reality while we're at the same time trying to move ourselves forward.
On that note, if we could take a look at our poll results. Again, we asked, if you're just joining us, we asked everybody, would you be okay with the kids going back to school before a vaccine is available? Wow, look at this, 50-50. That's fascinating. This extremely unscientific poll of the folks who are online for Michigan Radio Issues and Ale tonight. I don't know if I can say that people have spoken, but I find those results interesting. Jametta, on that same note, we just learned this week that Detroit Public Community School District has said that teachers will have that flexibility if they do not feel comfortable returning to the classroom, that the district is ready to hear that and is not going to try to force them to go back in. And at the same time, if families have indicated in the survey that they wish to have face-to-face instruction, that some schools will make it possible for kids to come to a school campus and pursue online education supervised by staff. Now, if you follow education policy at all, you know how many little Easter eggs and landmines are embedded in what we just heard. Mm-hmm. There's a huge shortage of certified teachers in Michigan classrooms statewide. And I feel certain that some people are just going to hear that and go, how? Jametta, I wanted to ask if what we saw reflected in some of the reporting this week, that yes to both sides approach, if that will be satisfactory to the parents that the network interacts with.
I don't know that it will be satisfactory, but it is a really important pivotal point. So one thing I think that the district did, when I say the community district, but also charters, many of us throughout the city worked together to create a survey to ask parents what they wanted. And so this was community-based organizations asking, at the same time school districts and charters were asking. And so a month ago, it was that about 30% would be face-to-face and the rest were going to be online based upon what parents wanted. But again, as we get closer and closer to school start, and we see the uptick in cases, and we see more information coming out with question marks from pediatricians, we see more parents saying, oh, I don't know. And we see more teachers go, oh, I don't know. So I think it is very progressive on the part of the districts to say, okay, let's have this conversation about how we mix match to try to be responsive to these different needs. How this is going to play out, I certainly don't have that magic wand. What I do think is important from leadership is that the leadership at the community school district, Dr. Vita and his team, and also through our charters. Most of the charters, by the way, have indicated they're going online, at least for perhaps the first 6 to 9 weeks. And the charter, DPSCD was doing that too at first. But I think through more conversation with the union and also with parents, they are wanting to be more flexible. But from a logistics standpoint, it's a monumental task. And we're actually saying to parents, we all need to give each other some grace, because not only have teachers not done this before, administrators have never done this before.
For sure. And at the same time, like from a parent perspective, if your choice is not showing up to work and losing your job, maybe that sounds like a viable option. If you have no affordable childcare, maybe, you know, maybe it's not the education that you wanted for your child this year, but I wonder if that would be a life preserver in this tsunami that we're all living through, right?
I think we're going to see a real potpourri of responses. So we have parents saying that say 6 weeks ago, we're not thinking about doing stay at home and being their child's teacher. And now they're calling and saying, who can I talk to make that happen? And saying, I'm going to quit my job to do that. But then the issue is, oh my goodness, what's going on with the unemployment situation? So our parents are really thrust in a really untenable situation, because if you don't have the economic resources to feed and take care of yourself, let alone what we see getting ready to happen potentially around evictions and other kind of critical needs like that, our parents are being squeezed. And so we do have to talk about money, because we need to make sure that the funds are available that precisely help people get to some even point where they can have a real choice. Do I go back to work, or do I stay with my child and teach them at home? Or I gotta tell you, have great teachers like these ladies be there to move their kids forward. And I do have to I gotta make this plug. I am so delighted to be able to be on the program with the two of you. And we all know how vital teachers are for our lives and our well-being. So it's a joy to have that. And it's a joy for me to always say that we believe in a partnership between teachers that's creating that nest of creativity and joy around lifelong learning. So it's a joy for me to be here with the two of you.
Thank you.
We are almost at the end of the hour, and I'm dying because I feel like we barely scratched the surface on a host of issues. But maybe, and apologies to Jane, who had a really interesting question about ISDs. I don't know if we're going to get to this. But there's one from Cindy, who I wonder if each of you could take a crack at this just in a sentence or two as we wrap things up. She says, I'm not a teacher or a parent, but I'm part of our community and I want to support the school. What can we do to help? What a marvelous.
I've got a good one. You know, a lot of the kids, especially I'm gonna say, 12 years old and up, they just need somebody to just kind of pace them, like a pacing guide type of a person, make sure that they're doing their assignments. So if you have neighbors, if you have somebody who is not, who has to go to work and is not able to do that, you can meet those kids online for 15 minutes. What do you have to do for today? Let me look at your schedule. Are you ready for tomorrow? Do you have any questions? How can I help? And just, be that pacing guide for your neighbors. You can do that for an hour. Meet 4 kids a day, or however much time you have. If everybody in the community would reach out to their neighbors, to their working neighbors, and make sure that their kids are on task, that would be so very helpful.
Mentoring is happening.
And yes, please. And it's like, it takes a village, and this is the time for us to be like, don't ignore the neighbor, wave at him and say, oh yeah, how is your hibernation? No, this is the time to really get in and help with the kids.
Jametta, how would you answer this question? What can we do?
I think parents need to really find their muscle as advocates. So I would encourage parents who even want to volunteer, certainly can contact us. We've got other great organizations, Detroit Parent Network, 4824. Become part of the voice that wants to make sure that there are more opportunities for parents to partner to improve and grow the schools, and that parents are part of the design of where we're going, versus that it being only teachers that do this, only administrators, that it's all of us coming together. So I would recommend is to look into advocacy and to see those parental groups that are doing that, because our voices together create more power for change.
There are years when a candidate can get someone fired up who's never been part of the political process before. I guess there are years when an issue can do that too. Robyne, what advice do you have for folks who want to get involved?
I would say contact your local school boards to really see if there are some kind of stakeholder connections that can happen, maybe resources. This is going to be a time when we're, like I said, with the supply bags that I spoke of earlier, that maybe local businesses could donate paper or glue sticks, things of this nature, because again, ink for printers or whatever the case may be, just something. It doesn't have to be huge, but those supplies really do come in handy. And now that we're really trying to make sure that we have the differentiating type of instruction, both virtual as well as hard copy, that might be something that your local school could really use. So I would say resources.
For sure. And in case folks were wondering, that phone number up there behind Jametta, if you want to get involved with Detroit Parent Network, I know that there would be folks there who would pick up that phone during regular business hours, or at the website, better yet, perhaps.
Yeah, better yet, hit us at DetroitParentNetwork.org, or check us out on Facebook. We got all kinds of things coming, and would love to be able to be in partnership with parents, teachers, and businesses to make sure that we're loving and helping our kids go forward.
Jametta Lilly, Detroit Parent Network, Robyne Muray, teacher with Lansing Eastern High, and Matinga Ragatz, Stateside's education commentator. Ladies, you guys are the rock stars. Thank you so much for everything you're doing right now and for spending an hour with us tonight.
Thank you.
For having
Thank
us.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Best and blessings to everyone.
Thank
Good luck,
you.
y'all.
Everyone who's in there at home, hang in there. This is nuts. This is nuts, and it's okay not to feel okay about things. That's all I have to, that's the extent of my wisdom tonight. We really thank you for taking part in this and for spending just another hour of screen time, and we wish you well. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.